Live everywhere on netrootsradio.com. David Waldman, Kagro, in the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Are you having trouble with your mute button the same way I am? Yes, Tuesday, April 18th, 2023, time for another show. Lots going on, and, has some very serious things to talk about, and then some nonsense things. I don't know. I guess the nonsense has caught my eye first. I have just been discussing this morning, just casual conversation in the house about these ads, that pop up on your screen every once in a while. And if you go to the same sites every day as I do, you tend to see these same ads that pop up, and some of them become ubiquitous and are always on the screen. And I need to lodge my complaint about one that's constantly on the screen at Daily Kos, not that it's their fault or anything. And a very odd one at that. Chewy, a well-known brand, the dog, cat, pet supply place that pets was it pets.com that did there was another one, pet something that had that talking, a puppet, spokes puppet that would do, and they went out of business on the same model. I don't really understand how that worked, but anyway, those were the days when people went out of business giving stuff away for free or whatever. And now, of course, they say they're giving stuff away and they spy on you, and somehow that's worth billions of dollars. I don't know exactly what's going on. Anyway, Chewy sends you the pet products in the mail, whatever. Fantastic. And they're advertising a bunch of, some weird combination of things that, I don't know, some computer somewhere told them I would be interested in, even though there's no pets in the house and there haven't been for 10 years. But anyway, maybe they just think everybody has pets, or Daily Kos readers love pets, and that's true. Anyway, they pick a random assortment of things to advertise to you, and one of them is a product for, the dog owners, I guess, know that this is occasionally a problem. But anyway, they're advertising a product that's contained in what looks like, this is the real problem here, a pint, like an ice cream pint, a little plastic pint size thing. I don't know what the size actually is, but that's kind of what it looks like. And, the eye immediately says, ice cream. But the head, when you read that the container says, stop stool eating, makes you say, oh, ice cream is actually ruined, maybe forever. And so I want to thank the folks at Chewy.com for doing that. You really, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of packaging is appropriate to the anti-poop eating, product, but, what are you going to say? A poop-shaped box? Not going to be, and don't make it brown. You're not going to want that either. Anyway, I don't know. That seems to have ruined my day. So there you go. And I thought it had gotten as bad as it possibly could until I started reading a news site, and I think it was USA. Yeah, it was USA Today. And the pop-up advertisement today is 4 signs of a dying liver. Write these down, it says in parentheses. So there you go. It's a product called, or an ad for a product called Liver Renew, which is really just a downer all to itself. And of course, liver, whether you're worried about your own actual liver or thinking about eating liver, it's not a pleasant thing to begin with. And I guess, I don't know what the other 3 signs of a dying liver are, but one of them, I guess the whole idea is to have you worried. I might have a dying liver because this is happening to me, and I have to click and subscribe to Liver or Renew or whatever it is. And, it doesn't say in so many words exactly what's going on, but it appears to be maybe a woman wearing maybe like yoga pants or whatever. And then there's this little cloud and wind indicators coming in. So I guess they're saying, oh, have you ever farted? Your liver's dying. You need our product. I imagine that's the scare tactic that's going on there, but, and I don't know if that's even a sign of anything besides you're alive, but there you go. So now you're supposed to be frightened of your own gas, and it means you're dying or something, or some part of you is dying, and you need to subscribe to this product right away. And, or it may mean you need to, you might need to use the bathroom. But if you do, and you're worried about your dog eating it, there's an ice cream looking product on the other page that you can use to get rid of that. Okay. So that's my life at the moment. Terrific. I'm so glad I signed on to the internet. And here I was only looking for news about, a pair of shootings, of course, because it's daytime now and we have to talk about the shootings from the day before. A pair of shootings that have captured attention around the country because of their shocking nature and the circumstances surrounding them. Of course, having followed gun fail and gun incidents for many years, it's no surprise to me. But yes, there's a whole genre of I've gone to the wrong address shootings. Lots of them. Hundreds of them. But two of them have happened at the same time. And in upstate New York and in was it in Kansas City? I know it was in Missouri. And both are instances in which basically people had the wrong address but were just approaching the house. I don't even know if they got to the point where they were able to knock on the door or ring the doorbell. But this has happened many times over the years, and I've seen it. And it's everything from, okay, maybe that might be an instance where somebody could be afraid, like an intoxicated person has mistaken either this house for their own or for their friend's house, and they are, under the impression that their friend has either jokingly or mistakenly locked them out, and so they try to break in. That's unfortunate. But these shootings are, of course, really just paranoid people who have been told through various, media that, one, that guns are about self-protection more than, militia participation, and B, necessary in order to keep you safe, and C, that there's this rash of home invasions that you need to be worried about, which there really isn't. And what did I do? A, B, C, I can't remember but there were 3 items there. And the next one is, of course, the idea that, your home is your castle, the old-time Castle Doctrine, combined with stand-your-ground laws that specifically focus on guns, that make it seem to, a very certain select portion of our population that it is within your rights to shoot anybody that either, certainly anybody that enters your house, anybody that is approaching your house that looks like they might want to enter, anybody who's approaching your house who might not look like they want to enter, anybody approaching your house because your property, and then, then you get eventually you end up with people who are like, this is my property line, and if you cross it, I can kill you. That's the way the law reads, and it doesn't read that way, but sometimes it ends up happening that way because there are certain laws and certain places where there's enough gun worship that if you go to court, you'll have to go to court and make this claim. I was in fear for my life. And then they have to decide, well, was that a reasonable thing to do? And some people, if you can get one person on the jury that says, well, I won't convict them for this because I hate it when people come near my property too. I guess it works as a defense. So yes, we've had 2 of these things and they're getting worse. And I don't know if they're getting more numerous or not, probably just because there's more guns out there in more people's hands. But that's a thing that people do, and it's wrong, and we don't always hold them accountable for it. And even if we do, there's still so much rhetoric, even if these people go to jail. And very frequently they do go to jail for this stuff. I mean, they might make a pretense about putting up a defense, and they go to court and they say, I feared for my life, but it usually doesn't work. I mean, occasionally it does, but the rhetoric and the advertising from the gun industry and just the whole tenor of everything surrounding guns, about them being for personal protection. And I don't know, I saw a clip yesterday, another one of those clips that's like, so-and-so destroys, Republican who says something about guns. And it's like, well, they made a good point. I wouldn't say they actually destroyed anybody over this, but I saw, which one is it? The eye patch one, the eye patch congressman, whose name I forget, even though it's well known to all of us. And, anyway, he was on, one of the shows and was, I guess, talking about the latest school shootings. And, I was promised that, he was going to be destroyed by the host when he proposed that there be armed guards at every school in America. And, I feel like there was a lot less than destruction that happened during that exchange. Cause I think the big whopper back was, well, it didn't help in Uvalde, which it didn't. But I mean, I felt like we already knew that. I was also sort of hoping, this wouldn't be destroying them either, but I always wondered whether any of the people who say, well, there need to be 2 armed guards at every school. And then he also went on about doors, single point of entry, et cetera, et cetera. Never mind the fire hazard thing. And the delay in getting in. But, no one has, that I've ever seen for some reason. I mean, it presents itself as an option very easily. Do the math. How many schools are there in the United States? And I forget. I mean, we did do the math at some point, and the numbers were readily available. But it was something like you'd have to keep like an armed force larger than the personnel count of the United States Marine Corps, or some ridiculous number of armed people to under contract to do nothing but guard schools. And it was an enormous number, and I can't even imagine what the expense involved is, and the number of, guns, and I presume they're also then giving out Kevlar vests as well, and they might as well dress them up like SWAT team members and make them march around. Anyway, the numbers are crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a possible. I don't know where you'd get the personnel, plus the amount of money spent while you're waiting for somebody to go crazy and show up and try to attempt a school shooting. And then, of course, you have to hope that they're not like the school shooters or the school guards elsewhere who have, when confronted with a crazed shooter with an AR-15, run away because they're outgunned. And then they say, well, then the guards need AR-15s, but the guards run away regardless, whether they have AR-15s or not. And then, I don't know. I really thought also, one of the more incredible things about the exchange in terms of somebody, being destroyed about, in this exchange, and it never coming to fruition that way. Dan Crenshaw. That's right. That's the name of the guy. Anyway, he, in the exchange says, well, we should talk about a solution. I mean, there's an actual answer. It's just a fact, he says, that if you had armed guards at every school in America, that would prevent this. Everybody knows that would be the case. And it's like, again, if you're talking about a reporter or anchor destroying someone in exchange, like, why not something that goes back? Well, that's your guess. Like, it's your guess that if you had armed guards at every school, they would prevent these things. I mean, it's a wrong guess because so far there's like 5-6 examples of places that had armed guards or police arrived on the scene before any shooting happened and nothing happened. I mean, the Uvalde thing should blow that up forever. I mean, the police, think about how many police officers actually ended up there in the end, and they were all, I don't know whether they were afraid or under weird instructions. I still don't know the story. I don't think anybody really knows, but they didn't do anything. And there was an armed guard on the premises. There were guards on the premises of going all the way back. Columbine High School had armed guards. They just were not in the right place, at the right time, and through no fault of their own. There was a guard at the, Parkland High School, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, who was there and took off running. He went the other way. Anyway, but I don't know. I can't believe that in that exchange, Crenshaw doesn't get called out as, what you're saying is, complete crap. You're saying, I know for a fact, everybody knows for a fact that this would not happen if there are armed guards there. No, you don't. What you know is there would be an armed guard there. That's all you know. Could the armed guard be shot dead first thing? First victim of the whole thing is the armed guard and then rampage? Sure. Could it have nothing to do with the armed guard and the shooting starts and 6 people are killed and the armed guard runs in and shoots somebody? Now, Dan Crenshaw would then point to that and say, see, success. The attacker didn't shoot a 7th person. No, but he shot 6. And you said having an armed guard there would prevent it and everybody knew it and it was a fact. And it's not a fact. You can't say it's a fact. That's crazy. Anyway, but they let him do that one, and then they had the argument over, well, wouldn't it, it could prevent things. Well, maybe yes, maybe no, but I don't know. I also think that there's room for that discussion of, are you crazy? You're going to cry about the expense of everything too. Oh, boo-hoo. We can't, how are we going to afford it? Well, how are you going to afford having 1.5 million people under arms guarding nothing but schools? He also went on to say, by the way, now I have to go look for this clip, I guess, in order for you to see it. But he also went on to say that, and maybe you've seen it. I think I saw it at Daily Kos. True. And, I'll have to figure out whose, diary it was in, but it was in one of the top recommended diaries in the last day or so. I don't mean to call the person out for saying, Crenshaw destroyed, but that does, annoy me. Anyway, when I want somebody destroyed, I want somebody destroyed. Anyway, he was, what else was his argument? Oh, yeah, that not only would the armed guards prevent everything, but, I guess the segue of it really, and this wasn't where I was going immediately, but just to shorten things a little bit, the segue here, the reason I switched over to this topic was he also, went on at great length about, you're never going to get rid of guns. And so that's not the answer, because the anchor was saying, well, shouldn't we be doing something about guns rather than doing something about putting armed guards at every school? Your answer is more guns. And he says, no, my answer is armed guards. But then at the end he says, well, yeah, okay. I guess in the sense that the armed guards will be armed. Yeah, I'm talking about more guns, but guns equal safety. And he did that whole sort of thing. Like, people need the right to protect themselves and you're never going to get rid of guns and everybody has the right to defend themselves and something, AR-15, yada, yada. But back to the old thing where, there's also room for discussion there where you say, not everybody has the right to protect themselves with weapons of war. We can make decisions about what weapons you're allowed to protect yourself with. And, the reason everybody thinks they need an AR-15 is that AR-15s are already too easy to get. And he may be right in the sense that we'll never get rid of all of them because people will 3D print them and import them and file the numbers, all of this sort of thing. But the harder they are to get, the fewer there are in circulation. And when they turn up, they're destroyed instead of auctioned off again. That would probably help too. But yeah, I don't know. I was hoping to see someone address the nonsense of, you're talking about putting 1.5 million or more armed guards out there. And, they all have to be trained and they wouldn't be. And then that means 1.5 million more weapons out there floating around for idiots to fiddle with while they're waiting to become superheroes. And the true reality of that, as I've mentioned 1 million times over with the gun fail stuff, is those guns get accidentally fired while they're waiting around for something to happen. They do. And I have just as many instances of of guns being accidentally fired on school grounds during the school day as we do of people going to the wrong house and being shot. And we have a gun sickness in this country, and it's not present in any other country, and we are blowing this pandemic just as surely as we blew the coronavirus pandemic. Okay. I think that's it for now for that topic, but who knows? Maybe I'll be redirected and I can keep an eye on what everybody's talking about and monitor all the various inputs and make sure I'm not missing too much stuff. Let's see. I did miss yesterday. Oops, and now I've missed John Shiflett's morning mastodon toot about this stuff. Thank you again for monitoring what's going on. And all right, I don't know. Let's see. I should acknowledge yesterday during our discussion of Dianne Feinstein and the likelihood of Republicans playing along in order to allow an easy, painless swap of one Democrat for another in replacing Dianne Feinstein on the Judiciary Committee. Mighty OCD had sent along a Politico article that says what we knew to be true. The playbook from yesterday reading out here, no GOP favors for Feinstein. And talking to Tom Cotton and others, it was unclear. Mitch McConnell didn't comment aloud on exactly what he was going to do. And there's always some weird chance that he may feel obligated to, or may think it's to his advantage to allow such a swap, maybe in exchange for Democratic forbearance during his own medical absence. But having already pocketed that, he now, I'm sure, feels free to put the screws to Democrats. And generally speaking, he's so invested in preventing Democratic presidents from being able to put judges on the bench that I don't think he would pass up the chance to continue to screw him over and make it even harder. So anyway, despite, the theory under which Republicans actually get out of the way, I think they see probably too much long-term political advantage in preventing it from happening, which maybe that's the right thing to do. I think I saw also some indication, whether it was from this or elsewhere, that Chuck Schumer actually intended to say, well, all right, well, let's give it a shot anyway. And that's okay. I mean, give it a try. And if Republicans block it, try and make some hay out of it. I don't know whether it catches on more thoroughly or it sinks in deeper if it happens after a Feinstein resignation and a new person is named senator and everyone expects that senator to have committee assignments. And the easiest thing to do in the middle of a term here would be to just plug them in. If they're supposed to be substituting for Senator Feinstein, give them those committee assignments. That doesn't always work out, by the way. I mean, it's not always the case that happens. Very often the cards get shuffled. But at a minimum, it would make a good public case, right? She's gone, and California is a big state and needs powerful representation and to be on committees of influence. There are vacancies here and there aren't vacancies elsewhere. Plug her in. Plug this new person in for Dianne Feinstein, and the country will expect that. And if Republicans prevent it, there's an opportunity to point up their obstructionism. But, they're not embarrassed by it. So I don't know what it's worth, but to the extent that it's worth anything, it's worth trying. I don't think it will happen. And I don't know how well Democrats will do in making hay out of the obstructionism. They never really have, but, not never, but it takes a while to sink in very often. All right. So let's see. In other news that you should be aware of for our opening round here, I guess no one's surprised. You tell me if you were surprised about this. George Santos has announced his interest in running for re-election. I guess close call there. There are some people who would have said, well, he obviously sees the writing on the wall. He'll just grift for as much as he can and then, walk off into the sunset. But that doesn't mean that he won't run. He'll run and lose and then walk off into the sunset. But I guess that caught some people by surprise who think there's this thing called shame and that Republicans understand what it is or sometimes feel it. That is not the case. Of course, he's going to try to get reelected. I don't know what his likelihood of success is, but There you go. Let's see. In other news, maybe I'll save that for the next segment so that I can get every new report into the segment. All right, let's see. We also have, this is a weird story. This was not on my radar at all, but apparently a story out of Oklahoma, which has caught the eye of the Washington Post, which means probably a week since it caught the eye of everybody in Oklahoma, whatever. That's just the way things work with local-ish news. Oklahoma governor, who's a Republican, and maybe is this possibly why he was in the news? Is that Stitt there in Oklahoma? I can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, it is Stitt. And Greg mentioned he's involved in something. There's some kind of thing going on, and I wonder if this was it. Oklahoma governor calls on officials to resign after, quote, horrid audio emerges. And we don't have time for the entirety of the thing, but, all you want to know, I guess, is in the subheader here. Officials in McCurtain County, that's the way it's spelled. I don't know if it's McCurtain or not, allegedly lamented they could no longer lynch black people. Oh, no. And spoke of assassinating a journalist, which is also not great, although Mohammed bin Salman did it, and so maybe they figure they'll become crown princes if they do it. This all according to the reporting of a local newspaper, and guess what? Well, Jonathan Edwards, by the way, writes this up for the Washington Post. Of course, our break is coming up, but I'll give you, let's say, one guess. The local newspaper reported this secretly recorded material and caught them doing these horrific things. One guess which journalist they were talking about assassinating. I'm pretty sure it's they were already talking about assassinating the guy when he got this story, but this is obviously somebody who's been covering this these local officials accurately and reporting to people just how terrible they actually are. And so then they decided to have a discussion about assassinating him. Unwise. And he got it on tape. Wow, rather fascinating, to say the least. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, I was just casting about at the end of the break here to see if I could find the story of the... I'm going to make a list of the things I need to look up, but let's see. So we need the Crenshaw video, and now we need the stories of the various hey, get yours off my property shootings. That's not good. Okay. But a couple other things. So anyway, yeah, I was telling you about this Oklahoma situation. They're apparently, what do you know, terrible people. And goodness. Well, just to, get the particulars on the record here, it was bad enough that Republican Governor, is it Kevin Stitt, was forced to say that these people should resign, as opposed to saying, no, I support them, and they were just tourists, and they were telling the truth and not doing espionage or whatever, or threatening people's lives, and I support them, and you should support me for president. This is one of those old-timey things where Republicans say somebody, locally did a bad thing, they should resign, we should get rid of those people, I'm not like them. So it's very, nostalgic to see a Republican do something like this. But here's the story. Again, as reported by Jonathan Edwards at the Washington Post, after McCurtain County officials dispatched with the agenda and ushered citizens out of a public meeting last month. And why did they do that? I don't know. This in southeastern Oklahoma. They spoke among themselves without realizing they were being secretly recorded, a local newspaper reported. And I guess basically what happened is they said, everybody out. We got to talk about stuff that we don't want you to hear, which is like, that's a huge tip. You know, that's not going to work out. And somebody just said, well, I'll leave a recorder behind and see what they're talking about when they throw all this. You can't just throw the citizens out of the council meeting. I mean, maybe under certain circumstances, I'm sure there's a provision for executive session, but, anyway, that's not what they used their time for, according to the recordings. During the ensuing conversation, a county commissioner lamented about how they could no longer yank black people out of the jail, quote, take them down to Mud Creek and hang them up with and then there's ellipsis, so who knows what he says, hang with a rope. And I don't know whether that's an expletive deleted or the guy, went on an exposition about the Pythagorean theorem and then came back and said rope. I don't know what happened. Anyway, this according to the McCurtain Gazette News, which later published an online file of the recording. And my guess is that it's the reporters from the McCurtain Gazette News who they're very angry with and want to murder now. The sheriff allegedly mocked a woman who'd recently burned to death in a house fire, comparing her to barbecue because of how sensitive he is, I guess. Wow. And together they hinted at assassinating a journalist who'd reported on their alleged misconduct, according to the Gazette News. Over the weekend, the newspaper published an article recounting a portion of that alleged conversation. I mean, it's not alleged, it's taped, promising to follow up with more reporting in coming weeks. The paper also posted snippets of the audio online. Gazette News reporter Bruce Willingham told KWTV he left his recorder hoping to get evidence that officials were holding secret meetings. Well, they are. So now we have evidence of that. And by the way, yes, it's still an alleged recording. Who knows whether in this day and age, why you kids could be manipulating the audio or staging something or faking, I don't know. But yes, it's still alleged, I know. But anyway, so far no one has said that it's been faked. So again, this is Gazette News reporter Bruce Willingham, who left his recorder there and got all this. I was completely appalled and frightened, quite frankly, Willingham told the station, and I guess we'll see why in just a bit. On Sunday, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt called for the resignation of 4 officials who, according to the Gazette News, were part of that conversation, including County Commissioner Mark Jennings, Sheriff Kevin Clardy, Sheriff's investigator Alicia Manning, and County Jail Administrator Larry Hendricks. I am both appalled and disheartened to hear of the horrid comments made by officials in McCurtain County, the governor said in a statement provided to the Washington Post. There is simply no place for such hateful rhetoric in the state of Oklahoma, especially by those that serve to represent the community through their respective office. You could use a new writer for that. I will not stand idly by while this takes place. I mean, you did, but okay, now you've taken action. You've called for their resignation. None of the McCurtain officials or their lawyer responded Monday to requests for comment. The Post reviewed the recordings but could not independently verify the identities of the speakers. They wouldn't know. And by the way, I just want to point out that if Ron DeSantis wanted these people gone, why, he'd have them arrested and dragged out by their heels. But Kevin Stitt is stuck saying, I demand a thing. I will not stand idly by, except while I'm idly standing here, saying that they should do something about their badness. The recorded comments were made at the March 6th public meeting. It was a public meeting of the McCurtain Board of Commissioners, the Gazette News reported. After the public left, Sheriff Clardy gave the board an update on a deadly fire that had happened 4 days earlier when a 43-year-old woman died after rushing back into the flames to try to save her 2 dogs, according to the paper. Then someone had a question about burn victims' body parts. You never had barbecue? Hendricks allegedly asked rhetorically. What a sensitive guy. Later, the conversation turned to Gazette News reporter Christopher Willingham's coverage of the sheriff's office. So, okay. Back to the top here. Bruce Willingham is the one who left his recorder in there and got evidence of the secret meetings. The evidence that he came away with was a discussion of Gazette News reporter Christopher Willingham's coverage of the sheriff's office. Manning, the sheriff's investigator, allegedly said she had some packages to take to the shipping center, which is located near the newspaper's office, and feared running into Willingham, Bruce's son, because of what she might do to him. So that's interesting. So father and son are reporters for the Gazette News, and the sheriff's investigator is afraid-ish, sort of, I guess is the word she's using, to go ship packages because she might run into another reporter that she is afraid she can't control herself from murdering him. Oh, you're talking about you can't control yourself? Commissioner Jennings asked her, according to the newspaper's reporting. Yeah, I ain't worried about what he's going to do to me. I'm worried about what I might do to him, she allegedly said. My pawpaw, oh boy, my pawpaw would have, ellipsis, and then it says, wiped him and used him for toilet paper, which I guess is just her garbled way of saying would have, used him for toilet paper, and my pawpaw would have wiped his, butt with him because that's, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean, really, but would have wiped him and used him for, he'd wipe you, and he would have wiped himself with all right. Obviously not the brightest people in the world, but there you go. My pawpaw. Your pawpaw, I hope, is spinning in his grave over what you're doing, but, maybe he's not. Maybe he's cheering. I got no idea what this family is like. Later, Jennings allegedly told McClarty and Manning that he knew of, quote, 2 big, deep holes if they needed them. Jennings later allegedly said he'd come across 2 or 3 hitmen in his life. Yeah, baloney. Who, quote, would cut no, ellipsis, mercy to Chris Willingham. Cut no mercy to Chris Willingham. Okay, whatever. Colloquialisms. What a bunch of gems they got here in Oklahoma. Later, Jennings allegedly told Clardy and Manning, he knew of the 2 deep holes, and also hitmen. On March 6th, the same day as the secretly recording meetings, Willingham had sued county commissioners, the sheriff's office, Clardy, and Manning in the U.S. District Court in eastern Oklahoma, accusing them of slandering him. Okay, how so? You'll see. His suit followed years of reporting on the sheriff's department for the Gazette News. In November of 2021, the newspaper ran the first article in what would be an 8-part series about misconduct in the sheriff's office, according to the lawsuit. Local news is valuable, folks. Over the next 5 months, the newspaper exposed several instances of alleged misconduct in the sheriff's office based on interviews with current and former employees, including homicide evidence that had been tainted, questionable hirings of employees with no previous law enforcement experience, and an investigation into who in the sheriff's office was leaking information, the suit said. In an effort to plug the leak, Clardy threatened to fire any of his employees who spoke with Willingham, and Manning told deputies she would get search warrants for their cell phones, it alleges. In June of 2022, Manning allegedly retaliated against Willingham for his reporting by, here's the slander part, telling someone that the reporter had traded marijuana for child pornography. Wow. Okay, that's a sheriff's deputy investigators. And this is the one who's afraid of what she'll do if she runs into, I'm afraid of what I'll do to him. You've already done plenty to him. You should be afraid of what he's going to do to you, except he's actually a law-abiding citizen. Whereas you're a cop, so you don't have to abide by the law. That's the way they raise them sometimes in Oklahoma and elsewhere. They come to the conclusion that cops can get away with anything because cops have been getting away with anything in Oklahoma or wherever else since forever. So if you really want to get away with anything, grow up to be a cop. Terrific. All right, well, that same day, Manning said in a teleconference that Willingham, quote, was, quote, one of them, who were the them? Mentioning the name of a man who had been involved, or rather had been convicted of having child pornography and sexually abusing a child, Willingham's suit alleges. So she was going around telling people, I don't know who, he's trading marijuana for child pornography, and he's one of them. He's an associate of the guy who just got convicted for having child pornography and sexually abusing a child. Those were lies to smear Willingham and destroy his credibility as a journalist, it adds. That is, it being the lawsuit. 4 days after the March 6th meeting, Willingham and the Gazette-News also sued the sheriff's office in Clardy, this time in state court, alleging the office spent months illegally denying public records requests related to 45-year-old Bobby Barrack, who died in March of 2022 after a deputy tasered him, the suit alleges. The FBI and the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation later investigated Barrack's death, it adds. The Willingham's lawyer, Kristen Jones, said in a statement that their family has owned the paper for more than 40 years. I guess that's how it is that father and son are reporters. They weren't hired by some outside source as necessarily the two most skilled reporters in the neighborhood. They own the paper. And so I could see that being a thorn in the side of the local authorities. Anyway, for nearly a year, they have suffered intimidation, ridicule, and harassment for trying to report the news to their fellow McCurtain County residents, the lawyer said. And while they are extremely grateful for the support they've received in the past few days, they look forward to the day when they can continue to report the news and not be the news. Aha. The newspaper plans to run 2 more stories based on those and has promised to release the full recording once the series has been published. So, wacky times, to say the least, in Oklahoma, so much so that it has forced a statewide Republican elected official to appear to want to do the right thing. That is unusual. So, speaking of how unusual it is to want to do the right thing or to actually do the right thing when you are a Republican, I have another small collection of Republican squad stories. You remember, it's an old thread I used to do back on the Bird site, and I haven't done it quite as much over at Mastodon because it's all the history of the thread is over at Twitter, but I do from time to time bring up whenever we get a rash of these stories of they're all illustrations of the axiom. Is it an axiom? Well, at least the old adage now old adage that every Republican accusation is a confession. So, in that file, I have 3 new stories to add to the pile. We'll start with this one here from South Dakota. Whose news is this? Annie Todd of the Sioux Falls Argus Leader reported this back on April 12th, so it's like ancient history at this point. Joel Koskan, Koskan. Joel Koskan, who ran for South Dakota Senate, apparently twice a Republican candidate for South Dakota Senate, pleads guilty to 2 counts of felony incest. What is I guess it's all felony, but I don't know. It's weird to hear it reported that way. But okay, essentially, this is one of those, like I said, situation where every Republican accusation is a confession. This is actual grooming behavior. He was grooming a family member, and don't tell anyone, and we'll have a secret, and and then raping. I don't even know anything about the gender of the person involved here. But the story is here. Joel Koskan, who ran unsuccessfully. At least there's that. Republicans rejected him. Ran unsuccessfully for state senate in 2022, and days before the election was arrested on charges. Who ran unsuccessfully for the state senate in 2022 and days before the election, maybe that and. Oh, okay. They probably ran in 2022 and 2020. days before the election, they didn't put in the 2020, was arrested on charges relating to child abuse, pleading guilty to 2 counts of felony incest Tuesday morning. That was probably a week ago at this point. He was sentenced in a Hughes County courtroom to 10 years in the South Dakota State Penitentiary. I guess he could still run. Anyway, this is the first part of the healing process. Wow, Judge Margot Northrup said during the hearing. I guess for somebody. Koskan, 44, originally faced felony child abuse charges for acts that allegedly took place between October of 2014 and October of 2016, according to court documents filed in November. He exposed his victim, a now 20-year-old woman, to, quote, sexual grooming behaviors. Again, every accusation is a confession when it comes from a Republican. In a probable cause statement reviewed by the Argus Leader prior to its sealing in November, the victim was Koskan's family member and had been allegedly sexually abused by Koskan since the time she was a child. Koskan also allegedly made references to GPS tracking and video monitoring the victim's activities. In other words, I'm watching what you do, and if you tell anybody, right, you'll be in trouble, or I'll get in trouble. I don't know what he told her. Anyway, a special agent with the South Dakota Department of Criminal Investigation recommended charges of rape, sexual contact with a child younger than 16, and aggravated incest. As part of Tuesday's hearing and part of a new plea agreement, Koskan would plead guilty, and it says plea guilty, please change that, plead guilty to the 2 counts of felony incest, pay a $10,000 fine for each count, court fees, and provide restitution for the victim included in the original plea agreement, rejected by Northrup in March. The new charges allege Koskan raped the victim and, well, I don't want to get too much into the details, but he raped this victim between April 2nd and April 16th, 2022 at his home in Wood. So I guess when she was an adult, but barely. Out of safety and privacy concerns, the Argus Leader does not name the victims of sexual assault without their permission. So I'm commenting on this. The victim reached out to a friend for some help, and I guess that's how the case cracked. And I know. I mean, you know what you need to know out of this one. Just interesting. Again, I'm sure he was planning on another run for South Dakota Senate on the platform of we have to stop all this child grooming behavior that all the drag queens aren't actually doing, but I am. And wow. Okay. Just there you go. I don't know what to say about that one, except that's not all the news, because there's more. I told you it's a whole file. This time, the account of this incident comes from, open up here, LGBTQnation.com. And I don't know who did the original reporting on this, but I don't know, maybe it was them. But here's another one, GOP lawmaker, and guess what? He's a lawmaker who raged about drag shows, is now accused of plying one of his underage interns with alcohol. He's married and has said, quote, we must protect Texas kids, only Texas kids apparently, from sick adults who want to sexualize them. And guess what? Who's first in line? Who's the sickest adult who's trying to sexualize kids? The answer is the speaker in this case, Texas State Representative Bryan Slaton. He's Bryan, in case you need to look him up. Texas State Representative Bryan, in the caption of his photo, he's Bryan. In the reporting, attention editors, he's Brian, but his last name is Slaton, so you can find him that way. He's a Republican and a legislator, he actually did win election, not like the other guy, who wants to, quote, protect Texas kids from, quote, perverted LGBTQ plus adults who want to, quote, sexualize them, has been accused of an, quote, inappropriate relationship that allegedly involved giving alcohol to an underage intern at his Austin condominium. An internal complaint reported to the Texas legislature's House General Investigating Committee alleges that Slaton contacted an unnamed intern after 10 p.m. on Friday, March 31st to invite her over to his condo. Slaton allegedly drank alcohol with the intern, a source told the Texas Tribune. There's your, original reporting. In Texas, providing alcohol to a minor is a misdemeanor, punishable by a $4,000 maximum fine and up to a year in jail. After the meetup, Slaton allegedly showed the intern fake emails which purported to know details of their late-night meeting. These emails were a sort of, quote, loyalty test, the complaint said, and Slaton allegedly told the intern not to discuss what happened with anyone. Ooh-wee. In a statement, Slaton's attorney, Patrick Short, wrote, "We are aware of outrageous claims circulating online by second-tier media that make false claims against Representative Slaton. As a result, he has been advised to forward all inquiries in this matter, including any that may relate to a possible complaint, to his legal counsel." It's a long no comment. Texas House Speaker Dale Phelan, also a Republican, said of the complaint, "The Texas House does not tolerate misconduct." Yeah, right. Or other inappropriate behaviors and takes all allegations related to these issues seriously. He said he expects the matter to be addressed in a swift and thorough manner, following all legislative chambers rules and conduct standards. Slaton was reportedly absent from the chamber last Thursday during an important debate on the state budget, a budget to which he added 27 amendments, the Tribune reported, so the absence seems unusual. Two of his fellow Republicans, State Representatives Briscoe Cain, isn't that the guy? Yeah, I think we know that guy, and Steve Toth have called on him to resign. Okay, is Briscoe Cain? I feel like he's a guy who made a idiot of himself at some point on Twitter, but that's a hell of a name anyway. "I am absolutely furious at a Republican whom I believe to be a sexual predator," Cain wrote on Twitter. "I've never been so ticked off, I tells you," at another legislator. He told the aforementioned publication that his tweet was about Slaton. "What's most troubling about the events in this story is that his behavior appears to be predatory," Toth wrote on Twitter. "Unfortunately, his handlers have closed their eyes to the signs of his dysfunctional behavior because he is willing to do their bidding." And that does happen from time to time. Texas State Representative Ana Maria Ramos wrote on Twitter, "Young adults working in the Capitol are vulnerable, and predators readily target these young people. We owe it to these young professionals to set the standard and protect them from harm." Slaton is one of the most anti-LGBTQ legislators in the Lone Star State. So here's where the advantage is from having the story being reported by LGBTQ Nation. They know his background thoroughly. He supports a law banning minors from drag shows, introduced legislation that would give tax cuts to heterosexual couples with lots of kids, because I guess they're making people for him to molest, and introduced legislation punishing abortions with the death penalty. He's a reasonable guy. In an April 4th tweet, Slaton wrote, "We must protect kids from sick adults who want to sexualize them. No drag shows, no porn in their libraries. They should have to come to my condo for it. No gender transition surgeries. Yes to letting kids be kids, because that's when I like them the most." I assume is what was going on in his head at the end there. Slaton has been married to a woman, they do point that out, since 2017, though they filed for divorce in April of 2022 because of the sanctity of marriage, and decided to stay together, though, through the following November. Okay. The following November, they decided to stay together, maybe forever. I don't know. He also served as a youth and family minister, working with underage youth for 13 years, his biography states. And, well, there's probably an investigation due on that front sometime soon as well. So just wanted to let you know about those two guys. And one more I'll sneak in before the break. This is the one I probably should have spent more time on, because you'll actually know who we're talking about. And maybe you already heard the story, so you're not going to be shocked. Or maybe you haven't heard the story and you are going to be shocked. Which one do I have here? Have I grabbed the Daily Beast's story on this? Yes, it appears so. Will Sommer, reporting for the Daily Beast, always doing a great job on these things. Stop the Steal organizer, Ali Alexander, yes, is the subject of this one. Stop the Steal organizer apologizes. There's no police involved in this one yet. Apologizes after being accused of asking teen boys for, pics. What's the online lingo for asking kids to send pictures of their genitalia, Well, a key figure, as it turns out, in the pro-Trump Stop the Steal campaign has apologized, after being accused of asking teenage boys for sexual pictures. Ali Alexander has become one of the most ubiquitous figures in the MAGA movement. Trump himself reportedly requested that Alexander speak at his rally before the riot, with his appearance only quashed by a last-minute intervention from Trump's aides. But this week, Alexander stands at the center of a scandal that raises questions about how powerful men in the far right treat their younger acolytes. And this is an interesting comment for him to say on this. This is so gay, Alexander said in a statement issued Friday night that addressed the allegations in broad terms. I guess that's a broad term. What? Alexander, who has described himself as bisexual in the past, added that he was, quote, battling with same-sex attraction. No, if you're bisexual, you are into some same-sex attraction. I don't think you're really battling it, but, if you're gay and upset about it, that's one thing. If you're bisexual, then you're not really battling it. And, I don't know. I'm not sure what to tell you. You could say I'm gay and I'm upset, or I'm bisexual and I'm upset about that. I don't know. He's obviously a confused individual. And maybe I am too, but not confused in the same way as him. I keep my hands off of people. That's just nice thing to do. That's the way you're supposed to treat other individuals in this society. Hands off of them. Thank you. The budding online scandal has also roiled the pro-Trump and white supremacist America First movement just months after it reached new levels of notoriety after its leader, Nick Fuentes, dined with Donald Trump and rapper Kanye West at Mar-a-Lago, which of course we always call Pervalago, and I guess with better reason than we usually attribute to it. Anyway, now Fuentes is facing backlash from his own supporters over whether he ignored warnings that Alexander, his friend and ally, was allegedly soliciting nude pictures from young men within Fuentes' movement. I mean, I don't think... obviously, Fuentes is probably pretty anti-gay and is going to have trouble with this one, but he could usually blow this off. But if he was actually recruiting among Fuentes' ranks, that might make him additionally angry. What a bunch of weirdos. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. Well, I think I'll open an article that I just saw fly by on Mastodon, but not going to get to it just yet. Got to tell you a little bit more about what's going on with Ali Alexander joining the ranks of the Republican squad at this point. No police involvement, just a bunch of apologies, but a weird story and involving actors who we know, and some weird twists and uncomfortable situations for all. And that's great, except for the uncomfortable situations imposed on the victims of his predatory behavior. But I don't mind if Nick Fuentes is uncomfortable. But we continue because there's some interesting detail in all of this, besides the fact that, Ali Alexander has embarrassed himself with his behavior, but in particular because he's been doing this in the middle of a movement that is so vehemently anti-everything, anti-LGBTQ plus. I think that covers everything. And he's one or more of those letters. And again, every Republican accusation is a confession. On Friday night, Alexander, who was questioned by the House January 6th committee about his role organizing a canceled rally dubbed the Wild Protest outside of the Capitol, which drew crowds to the building right before the riot began, issued a statement Friday offering a general apology. I apologize for any inappropriate messages sent over the years, Alexander wrote, adding later, when I've flirted or others have flirted with me, I've flexed my credentials or dropped corny pickup lines. Other times I've been careless and should have qualified those coming up to those coming up to me's identities during flirtatious banter at the start. I don't know exactly for sure what he's trying to say, but I guess he's trying to say he should have clarified rather than qualified his identity, I guess, as identity as a bisexual at the start when people he interacted with began their interactions. I don't really know what he's saying. It doesn't matter because it doesn't excuse anything and it's not much of an apology. Alexander didn't respond to requests for comment from the Daily Beast. In his statement, he claimed he had also been targeted by false accusations and edited screenshots of his messages, but declined opportunities to point out which accusers or screenshots aren't legitimate. Rumors about Alexander's alleged sexual behaviors toward younger men have circulated in conservative online circles since at least 2015, and it has apparently done him no harm until just now. But they reached a new level late last month after, and you can't cheer because it's Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos, the controversial British provocateur and one-time Alexander ally, turned on Alexander after, why? Good motivation here, right? Alexander and Fuentes pushed him out of a potentially lucrative position in Kanye West's nascent presidential campaign. Yiannopoulos started releasing video interviews and other evidence meant to prove that Alexander sexually propositioned both adult men in their 20s and at least 2 teenagers. Yiannopoulos, whose own career as a far-right pundit imploded in 2017 after remarks he had made downplaying the seriousness of pedophilia surfaced, claims he has more damaging videos to release about Alexander and Fuentes. Yiannopoulos claims he's releasing the video against Alexander because Alexander dropped Yiannopoulos' name to entice young men. One screenshot purports to show Alexander dangling the prospect of a meeting with Yiannopoulos to a teenage boy. And isn't that something special? Yiannopoulos says pedophilia is not so bad. In fact, it's pretty good. And then Alexander says to a teenage boy, hey, I'll introduce you to the guy who thinks pedophilia is awesome. Wow. Anyway, the reason I'm doing this is because he used my name, Yiannopoulos told the Daily Beast. Not that you should actually believe anything Yiannopoulos says ever to anyone, but okay. Ready for this section called Who Will Be My Arm Candy? Ugh. I don't think anybody's really ready for that. In 2017, Aidan Duncan, a 15-year-old boy in Colorado interested in right-wing politics, sent Alexander nude pictures after Alexander asked him for them, according to an account Duncan gave in a March 2023 podcast appearance. And I guess the real examination that needs to be had, and you can't really do it in a newspaper article, is what is it in the head of a 15-year-old boy, one who says, I'm interested in right-wing politics. I have these values, and I want to reflect them in my politics and get active. And then the first thing you run into is an older man asks you for nude pictures, and you say, my commitment to traditional values is so strong that I will give these nude pictures to you, older man, so that I can have the opportunity to get active and rise in right-wing politics and rail against the evils of older men asking younger boys for nude pictures. Even though, I don't know what to tell you. Logic, etc., not really the strong suit of anybody that I know of who's like, yeah, boy, do I want to get involved in right-wing politics. And then at 15, the skills maybe aren't there. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. You want to bang your head against the table. Like, what? Why don't you then, see, this is bad, or I should not be involved in this, or sometimes people who claim to value right-wing conservative values don't, and they're liars, and I should not get involved with them. I should get involved with somebody else. But he was so sure that Alexander would make him a famous, prominent person in right-wing politics and give him a career that he said, let me start my career by sending out nude photographs of myself. I was like, you've just planned the end of your career, kid. What's wrong with you? And the answer is, I'm 15 and I don't know what I'm doing. While Duncan was a high school sophomore just starting out in politics, and by the way, that's exactly, of course, why Ali Alexander would decide to ask this kid for it, because he's 15 and he doesn't know what he's doing. So, anyway, that should surprise no one. Scott has sent me a link here. Maybe it's relevant to what we're dealing with right now. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting one. Seth Abramson tweeting around, I guess, along with a screenshot from Ali Alexander. It says, Ali Alexander and Marjorie Taylor Greene are both dangerous lunatics, and wild dogs couldn't keep me from watching them fight. I guess, yeah, maybe a murdery Trader Greene must have heard about this and said something disparaging about Ali Alexander, and he says he's going to get back at her. I don't know. Let's see. This is false, Marjorie, and I'm about to embarrass you. He's going to embarrass her. That's going to be interesting. Laura Loomer politely declined an offer to support, I guess this is Kanye West. They just are referring to it as YE, like yay. Yay 24, but both are capitalized, so I'm not certain why it's not Y, capital Y, lowercase e, but who knows. Yay 24, this is Laura Loomer, right? She politely declined an offer to support Yay 24. She said she supported Trump no matter what. Furthermore, you asked for a meeting with Yay. We declined it after you fired your consultant, Milo. Talk to Isaiah Wortman about the legality of his purchase, too. Wanna get legal? You lie to J6 families, me, and now this. Stop divorcing the truth. They really are dangerous lunatics, and it will be fun to watch them fight, and you could probably do a pay-per-view with that one. We'll have to figure out exactly what's going on there and see what Seth Abramson has to add to the picture. All right, so where were we? Yes, we had just found out about 15-year-old Aiden Duncan, who I guess has agreed to give his name and everything in this whole thing. And I hope that I don't know whether he's still a right-winger or not, but even if he is, I mean, I hope he's making himself a mentor to other young conservatives. I mean, as dumb as it is to be a young conservative, quite honestly. And as much as I hope they meet with repeated failures and then decide that this is just not for them, it would be a good thing if he were, warning them, hey, a lot of the figures who you think are, one, going to mentor you, and two, are safe as mentors because obviously they stand for traditional values. That's why they're leading conservatives, are in fact lying hypocritical predators and are hiding in plain sight. And no one will believe that I am a sexual predator of underage boys if I'm a conservative, because that doesn't make any sense, right? Does I? Oh my gosh. No one will believe that about me. But it actually kind of works. And they know that. And they park themselves there because they know that. And then they abuse young boys and girls too, I'm sure. There are plenty of abusers of the young girls as well. And they're just hoping no one will believe it. And that the up and coming ranks will keep their mouths shut in exchange for getting in on the grift. And I think it's also very troubling that at 15, you're so concerned not only about making a living in general, but so concerned that, one, the living be, unwarrantedly lavish, and two, that it be made on false pretenses. At 15, you're already not only do I have to worry about making a living, but it has to be grift, and I prefer that it be grift. How can I get in on it? It's just kind of bad news in general. Anyway, where were we? Right. In 2017, this 15-year-old boy agrees to give him nude pictures. While Duncan was a high school sophomore and just starting out in politics, Alexander was a 32-year-old with a decade of political work for the Republican Party behind him, and now he was willing to share the connections he had gained through that work with Duncan, as long as the teenager met certain preconditions, including secrecy. Well, I would say including nude pictures of himself. Geez, that's the real issue. You'll have me sharing my entire network with you, Alexander told Duncan, according to Snapchat screenshots reviewed by the Daily Beast. Originally from Dallas, Alexander pleaded guilty to felony property theft in 2007 and felony credit card abuse in 2008. But despite his criminal background, Alexander, who was using his legal name, Ali Akbar, I thought that was a pseudonym, but that was his legal name, and you would have thought that would have kept him out of Republican politics for quite a while, don't you think? But I don't know. They overlook these things sometimes. Well, he managed, despite this criminal background, to rise in the GOP during the online conservative backlash to the Obama administration. Now, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, we can all say that it wasn't despite his criminal background that he managed to rise in the GOP. It was because of his criminal background that he managed to rise in the GOP. They love criminals. Leveraging his position writing for blogs with names like Hip Hop Republican, Alexander received funding from billionaire conservative mega donor Robert Mercer, because he doesn't mind perverts, organized a national club for bloggers that later faced questions about how Alexander spent the money he raised, he stole it, and hosted an annual party at the Conservative Political Action Conference. It was a pervert's paradise. You know, one of those parties that we read about that they used to host at the, like the ones at the Breitbart Embassy, as they called the townhouse with weird provenance that Steve Bannon lorded over his interns and other, people he was probably sexually molesting as well. I'm just guessing, because everybody was getting into the act there, and whatever, blah, 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 burned his hot tub with acid, yada, yada. He's a weirdo, too. By 2017, Alexander had become an ardent Trump supporter with a passion for social media trash talk. He became a protege of MAGA figures like noted pervert Roger Stone and InfoWars chief Alex Jones, and ran with a group of other young MAGA internet provocateurs, including anti-Muslim activist Laura Loomer and blundering smear artist Jacob Wohl. What a crew. Holy mackerel. But in his messages to Duncan, according to the screenshots, there was one name Alexander dangled as a perk for the teenager if he kept up contact with Alexander: Milo Yiannopoulos, noted pedophile, or, pedophilia fan. Anyway, in a September 4th, 2017 exchange, this was right about the time that he lost his career when those comments came out. In an exchange right about that time about an upcoming trip Alexander was planning, Alexander purportedly told Duncan he would introduce the teenager to Yiannopoulos and speculated about whether the boy would be Alexander's, quote, arm candy, and suggested the boy would have to be, quote, entertaining. You ready for really getting grossed out? Rolling with me, Alexander wrote, according to the message. Mostly, I'll have an entourage. Depends. Depends. If it's me babysitting you during the day, then no. I don't have kids. And if it's something more entertaining, then maybe. All depends on what we're up to. No matter what, I'll let you meet Milo. There's probably 5 people I'll introduce him to. But who will be my arm candy? The one always with me in VIP and in/out, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean? Well, that is to be determined by the boy who plays his cards the most correct. He also can't speak, but he's, as well, a disgusting pervert. Arm candy, greater than sign, babysitting, Alexander added, according to the screenshot. Other screenshots show Duncan sending Alexander a picture, which was redacted in the version of the screenshot reviewed by the Daily Beast. Alexander responded with the face with heart eyes emoji and asking the teenager which app Alexander should use to send him money. Ay. An undated series of screenshots purport to show Alexander laying out rules for his contact with the teenager, many of them stressing secrecy, of course, and a sort of quid pro quo relationship between sexual availability and career opportunities because of how much they love conservative values. Everything is secret and private, one rule read. We're family, which is coincidentally exactly what Paul Ryan told everybody at the infamous recorded meeting of the Republican leadership when they were discussing first Ukraine and how terribly Russia was imposing itself in Ukraine, and they knew this in 2016, and now many of them actually oppose actually helping Ukraine in all of this, even though they went on and on about how Ukraine needed the help and we had to fight for freedom, et cetera, et cetera. But then the whole proceeding was interrupted and derailed by Kevin McCarthy saying that he thought Putin paid Trump, and then everybody laughs, and Ryan says, well, keep this quiet because we're family. And as it turns out, that's a line that even their perverts use when extracting naked pictures of teenage boys from their proteges. I don't know. That's weird. Anyway, another of these screenshots of messaging back and forth. Another said Duncan was allowed to say no, but that Alexander might deprive him of something unspecified in return. Ready? Boundaries are cool, the message reads. Allowed to say no. However, the less you deprive me of, the less I deprive you of. I'm a big sharing person, unless it's not even. And then, of course, the whole relationship is not even. That's why you're having it. That's why we call it exploitative. And that's why you're interested in it, because it is exploitative. You're disgusting. Finally, according to the messages, Alexander asked Duncan to, quote, be mindful of each other's reputation. The 15-year-old boy doesn't really have much of a reputation necessarily, but I'm sure among his peers he certainly does, and even if his peers aren't of national significance. The reputation, of course, that Alexander is worried about is his own. In an appearance last month on a podcast hosted by white supremacist Richard Spencer, Duncan claimed that Alexander wanted Duncan to fly to Texas and, quote, be his intern, assuring the teenager that the boy could just lie to his parents and say that he was going to a swim meet. And I wonder if this is indicative of where this poor kid has ended up, that he is appearing last month on Richard Spencer's podcast. That's either him trying to find a new right-wing mentor. I guess it's possible that Richard Spencer could be like, let's embarrass Alexander and we'll get this kid who has quit Republican politics because of his outrage over what happened to him to speak up about it. But you wouldn't be doing that with Richard Spencer, probably. So the fact that you're willing to go on Richard Spencer's podcast probably means that despite it all, you're still interested in seeing if you can get some of this right-wing grift. But Alexander, the story continues, had grown frustrated by May of 2019, claiming that the still underage Duncan wouldn't send him, and this is a quote, good jack-off material. Sorry, everybody. I know it's morning. I don't know. I guess no one of those words, I don't know. Any of them, should I have gone with the censoring horn? You wouldn't have known what he was saying here. I mean, that's pretty much it. So there it is, an outright declaration of exactly what's going on with these pictures. You don't even send me videos anymore, Alexander wrote, according to the message. No good jack-off material. Don't even want to be my side piece. There's nothing ambiguous about this. I mean, I guess we got to say, if they're truly, if they're real messages, and the Daily Beast is certainly convinced that they are. A day later, according to the screenshots, he asked Duncan to come to Texas for a week for an, quote, internship. Although now I guess we all have some pretty clear idea of what that would involve. And it's probably not work. And it's certainly not work for right-wing conservative values. That's obvious. Duncan, now 21, has since become a relatively high-profile member of Fuentes' racist America First movement, going by the name Smiley. In case you were wondering, on Spencer's podcast, Duncan said he believed Fuentes knew about the rumors about Alexander's alleged solicitation of nude photos. I think Nick is 100% aware, Duncan said on the podcast, and I don't know whether that's supposed to be bad about Fuentes or not. Not sure. Last Thursday, Duncan posted a statement on Twitter about his communications with Alexander. When I was 15, I was naive and desperate, and I think it's probably continued. to this day. I thought I had no choice but to cooperate with inappropriate and humiliating requests if I wanted to make it in politics. I figured that was just the nature of the game, which again is such a layered statement. It is sort of the nature of that ultra right-wing game. It is. You're right about that. It's not the nature of the regular mainstream political game, but of course, in order to recruit you for the extreme right wing, sexually or otherwise, they do have to convince you that is the nature of the game, that right wing, or rather that mainstream politicians, and in fact, that Democrats are the ones who are horrible, horrific, pedophile predators, etc. And then when you discover that, hey, Republicans are too, I feel like I was lied to. They say to you, well, I got to tell you, the truth is, yeah, both sides, both sides really do this. This is the nature of the game. It's not unusual, therefore, for you to be asked to send nude pictures. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and do it. It's a trade-off. At 15, you send people nude pictures. And then at 30-something, you're an established Republican figure with your own grift going. It's worth it. You should do it. As opposed to the actual traditional conservative value of, well, you're 15. First of all, your career isn't going to be defined right now. And second of all, you grow up, you get through high school, perhaps you go to college, you study politics, you get yourself involved, you do some internships if you can, you get yourself involved at a low level and you work your way up the ladder and eventually success. That's the conservative way. But apparently, the new conservative way is, you lock in quote unquote success by compromising yourself immediately at the age of 15 and trading nude pictures of yourself for a career in thieving money from others. I mean, to believe that was an okay thing to do. B, did I say one? A, damn, I always forget. Anyway, first of all, to convince yourself that that's an okay thing to do is a problem. Second of all, that that's the nature of the game is sad. And then three, I guess I'd say, all right, suppose you're right. That's the nature of the game. That doesn't say to you, this is a bad game. I shouldn't play in this game is amazing to me. But, if I understood right-wing mentality, there'd be something I could do about it, I guess. All right, there's more, and I guess we'll try and cram it in here and get it all out of the way before, we decide to talk about real news, about things that are really happening in the world. Alexander started messaging another kid, 17-year-old Lance Johnston, in the summer of 2019. According to Johnston, the floppy-haired teen was a rising star on conservative TikTok communities. I didn't even know. Amassing more than 140,000 followers under the screen name Lance Videos. That's creative. Let's see. Johnston and Alexander started exchanging messages about politics. Johnston claims that a friend warned him early into their communications that Alexander has a history of asking for sexually explicit pictures. My friend at the time told me that he had heard some weird rumors about him, Johnston told the Daily Beast. At first I was kind of like, I don't know. I was 17. I had just gotten into politics. Alexander moved oddly quickly, it says here. That's a quote, towards discussing sex with the teenager, according to Johnston. In July of 2019, what Johnston claims was the night of the White House social media summit, where Trump feted Alexander and other conservatives as victims of online censorship, when they were in fact online predators. The 34-year-old Alexander used the eggplant emoji to ask the teenager for a picture of his genitalia, I will say. According to a screenshot, they actually just used the medical term here. I guess we could have gone with that. Show me your eggplant emoji, essentially, is what Alexander wrote, according to the messages. Johnston, I guess to his credit, even at 17, says, what's that? I don't even know. And, Alexander wrote back, OMG. Yeah, well, he used the D word for that, which, is also Dick Cheney's name. So I guess you can go ahead and just say that. Oh my God, Dick Cheney, Alexander wrote back, according to the picture. Johnston says he refused. Isn't that surprising? And quickly blocked Alexander. That's like normal behavior. Johnston took a screenshot of the exchange, but he was fearful of raising the issue more broadly on the far right. I thought in my mind he would try his best to discredit me and ruin me politically and influentially with my time in politics, Johnston said. And you're right, he probably will. Still, a friend of Johnston's publicized the screenshot, which began circulating in conservative circles. Alexander took to a video live streaming app to defend himself. I'm not certain what defense there would be. Well, here's the answer. You can have any conversation you want with someone who's 17, Alexander said, and I don't know whether that's supposed to mean it's okay to discuss sex with them, or I have no idea what that means. The eggplant emoji screenshot gained new circulation in far-right circles in 2022 as Alexander and Fuentes achieved prominence as members of West's entourage, and that's when Johnston claims Fuentes asked him to say in a text message to Alexander that the screenshot had been doctored and apologized. Presumably, the text message could then be screenshotted and used to discredit Johnston. Yikes. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We have the opportunity now to continue with the weirdness of this Daily Beast article about Ali Alexander, if you wish. And some of you may not wish, I suppose. But, yeah, well, might as well get all the nuance to it as we see. I mean, it could be the start of the implosion of the remainder of this round, that generation of the far-right, alt-right. And I don't know. Yes, maybe no. And if so, I mean, there's a theme to this. We could continue on as we'll read through the rest of it, and then we'll jump into another article or two to see what else there is to add to this if we get that opportunity. All right, so this was kind of a weird setup too. So at some point, Fuentes, who I guess you might guess, given where he is in the alt-right, far-right universe, might at this point then disavow Alexander and say, I don't want anything to do with him. And I'm not certain whether that's happening or not. It's unclear always with these guys where they stand. But let's see. So this message in which he uses the eggplant emoji, at some point, Johnston says that Fuentes asks Johnston to say in a text message to Alexander that was a doctored screenshot, and I'm sorry that it got out there, and apologized to Alexander, who was preying on him. Presumably that text message would then be screenshotted and used, if necessary, I guess, to discredit Johnston, unless he continued to play ball, which is not a place you want to be. Nick personally asked me to apologize to Ali for supposedly faking the messages, Johnston said, but Johnston insists the eggplant screenshot is legitimate. In exchange for disavowing the eggplant exchange, I can't believe we're having to say this, according to Johnston, Fuentes and Alexander offered to get him a job in politics. But by the way, you can get a job in politics without any of this happening. You know, it's not easy, but it's like getting a job anywhere else. But it's weird too. I'm thinking about all these people who are, conservative and trash talkers and whatnot, and the likelihood of their driving by somebody else and yelling, at let's say at homeless people, get a job. Well, like I did, I went and participated in some sort of weird online sex scandal with predatory 34-year-old creeps. And I traded it for a job. So you can do the same. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Anyway, basically they wanted me to lie, apologize to Ali, and then they said they would try to get me a job, Johnston said. Fuentes denied Johnston's claims about him in an email to the Daily Beast. I never offered Lance Johnston a job, nor did I urge him to disavow that screenshot, Fuentes wrote. In a post on the social media app Telegram, Fuentes claimed Johnston was using the screenshot to, quote, extort Alexander into giving him a job on West's campaign. And by the way, don't take any jobs on Kanye West's campaign. That's a dead end. 4 years later, Johnston thinks Alexander used his prominence in the MAGA movement for, quote, very creepy ends. Well, he did. No person like Ali should be even near politics, he said, except that Duncan over there thinks that that's the usual MO in politics. It's the nature of the game. Okay. Well, now a section called The Real Victim in This Entire Saga is Me, which is really the Republican position on everything in a nutshell. Alexander, who has described his ethnicity as half black and half Arab and says he's bisexual, might seem like an unusual ally for the avowedly racist and homophobic America First movement led by Fuentes. Yes, but, all of this seems unusual for people with conservative values, don't you think? But Fuentes, a 24-year-old who marched at the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville with a long history of racist, anti-Semitic, and sexist remarks, has appeared frequently with Alexander at events like Stop the Steal rally in Georgia in 2020. The pair would later become arguably the most prominent far-right figures in West's short-lived, virulently anti-Semitic presidential campaign after Yiannopoulos' ouster. In text messages reviewed by the Daily Beast, Yiannopoulos warned Fuentes in broad terms about his ally's reputation. Alexander wants to come to your events to have sex with underage boys, Yiannopoulos wrote in a January 2022 text to Fuentes. Snap out of it. And, I guess you'd get that message and ordinarily you'd say, oh my God, holy crap, I got to do what I can to make sure that doesn't happen. But then also it might occur to you, holy crap, this is Milo Yiannopoulos saying this. And he wants me to get rid of Ali Alexander and probably put him in there so that he can come to the events and have sex with underage boys. I'm not certain what to believe here. As the allegations mounted against Alexander over the weekend, Fuentes said he, quote, disavowed Alexander's actions and called them gross, but accused Yiannopoulos of sitting on the claims until he could use them to get revenge on his rivals from the West campaign. In a Telegram post, Fuentes also blamed Duncan and Johnston for, quote, flirting with Alexander to advance their careers. Duncan and Lance were willing to go along flirting with Ali to varying degrees without any protest because they thought it would advance their political careers. And I guess he's right. Fuentes wrote, if you are flirting with an adult gay man because you think it's going to land you a job, you know full well what you're doing and it's gross. Sorry, but even at 15, I would have never sent nudes to an adult gay man. There's something wrong there. And you shouldn't be sending nudes to anyone at 15. But Nick Fuentes isn't really the best source of information for anything or advice about life in general. So I thought I would throw in some better advice. Don't send nude pictures to anybody ever, really ever, but certainly not when you're 15. But I say ever. Yes, you can consent to do whatever you want as an adult. But long term, I think there's probably no real upside to it. So I would say avoid it where possible. Anyway, Fuentes added that the real victim in this entire saga is me. How? In a self-pitying post, he referred to himself as an incel, internet slang, of course, for involuntarily celibate. Sounds like everybody involved got what they wanted, Fuentes wrote, except me, the incel, who is now somehow being blamed for things I had nothing to do with. I don't see him being blamed for anything. This isn't the first time, by the way, that Fuentes' racist group has been dogged by accusations of inappropriate sexual behavior regarding children. I wonder how cell he is. I'm just wondering. Anyway, in August, Fuentes associate Alejandro Richard Velasquez Gomez, America First, was arrested and charged with possessing child pornography. Velasquez, who went by Latino Zoomer online, has been photographed with Fuentes, also faces charges over allegedly threatening a conference held by a rival conservative group. Okay. The accusations against Alexander and his apology have already alienated several far-right figures. I don't know this one. Oh, yeah, I do. Sure, right. Anthem, is that how he pronounces it? I don't know what his first name is. Gionet, the far-right provocateur known as Baked Alaska, much easier to pronounce, who was recently released from a prison term for his role in the Capitol riot, posted a statement Sunday saying he would not, quote, I guess, be working with Ali in any capacity moving forward. So Ali admitted to sending inappropriate messages and flirting with young boys, pro-Trump rapper Bryson Gray tweeted, disgusting. Despite his Friday night apology, Alexander struck a more defiant tone hours later in a bizarre late-night Telegram audio live stream from what appeared to be a karaoke bar. As an amateur performance of Billy Joel's You May Be Right played in the background, Alexander told an acquaintance that his life had become a, quote, reality show revolving around one question: implode or not implode? Okay, I say implode. I just think that that's probably the best answer in all of this. Asked by someone on the stream whether he wanted to perform karaoke, Alexander demurred. I'm in the middle of a scandal, Alexander said at one point. I can't do karaoke. I'm in the middle of a scandal that I'm going to survive, which to me means you can do karaoke. But mentally unstable and atop all of the sexually predatory behavior, probably should be arrested and stopped at some point real soon. But, you know, to the extent that they all implode and or kill one another, I guess that would be awesome. These people are deeply, deeply troubled. And I think we knew that. And we knew that from their politics. But now we also know that from their personal behavior. And really, we should have known that that was their personal behavior because of their politics. Because every Republican accusation is a confession. Every time and always. It never fails. It doesn't matter how little sense it makes given the things that they've said or done. The more they say or do to make it look like it would be incredible to find out that they were doing the things that they accuse others of doing, the truer it is. I promise you. Don't forget. So, I said that there were some other developments that might make a good segue, and they might. Today being Tuesday, ordinarily, I can't remember, did we discuss this? I can't recall whether this was another week where Joan was planning to be away. Sometimes things just get hectic. Sometimes things just, you forget it's Tuesday. Maybe in all the DC Emancipation Day hoopla, today seems like Monday. I don't know. But it's okay. Don't worry about it. And if you're not 100%, so much the better that you need the rest. But yeah, well, I was hoping to have a better report of her health anyway, whether she was able to join us or not. But we'll miss having Joan with us unless she's just now realizing, in which case we'd certainly welcome her to join at this point. But I can also use this opportunity to connect to another story. I guess I thought we were done with stories about Charlottesville now at this point, but it turns out that we're not, and there's a very interesting reason why. So Molly is it Conger or Conger? I'm not really sure. Blogging at thedevilsadvocate.ghost.io. I guess this is sort of like a Substack-ish kind of a newsletter, but the Devil's Advocates is what it's called. And of course, I'll provide you the link. The title of the piece, Burning Hate. And wow, it's interesting and you should listen along. Ready? It begins by reminding us, or telling us if we don't know, there is no statute of limitations on felonies of any kind, really, of felonies in Virginia. With that in mind, here is Section 18.2-423.01-B, very long name, very official sounding, of the Code of Virginia. Are you ready for this one? Burning object on property of another or a highway or other public place with intent to intimidate. And then there's a penalty attached to this. So that's a very weird description of what's going on. But what do you think they're getting at? I think that's getting at cross burning was the idea. Burning an object on the property of another or a highway or a public place with the intent to intimidate, right? So Klan type cross burning. Here's how it goes. A, any person who, with the intent of intimidating any person or group of persons, burns an object on the private property of another without permission is guilty of a Class 6 felony. They probably had to invent new classes to fit this thing in. Section B here, any person who, with the intent of intimidating any person or group of persons, burns an object on a highway or other public place in a manner having a direct tendency to place another person in reasonable fear or apprehension of death or bodily injury is guilty of a Class 6 felony. Okay. Ready? On August 11th, 2017, you remember what was going on? Charlottesville. Hundreds of torch-bearing marchers. Torch-bearing, torches burn, right? That's an interesting question, right? Do you mean burning an object like consuming it in flames, or lighting an object that's meant to bear flame without itself going up in flames? Like holding a torch, it is burning an object, but usually you'd be thinking more along the lines of using the torch to light something else, like a burning cross that would then be burnt. But I mean, there's flame here. Is this I don't know. But, oh, hey, Joan knows. Anyway, what do you know? Hold on a second. Let me bring her right in. Hey, good morning, Joan. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm sorry that I was late this morning.
Oh, that's all right. I wasn't sure whether you just weren't feeling well again or just...
I'm slowly getting there. Okay. I'm on the mend.
Well, that's good news. Okay. Well, we can jump right into it. I'll continue with the story. Maybe I'll try this again tomorrow.
Continue with your story.
But yes. I'll just let everybody know it's a long story. But what's interesting going on here is that there is a statute in Virginia, which as I was saying, I think is aimed at Klan type cross burning, which is not a bad fit for what was going on in Charlottesville, though no crosses were burned there. But they think there's a new prosecutor in Albemarle County, Virginia, which includes Charlottesville, who picking up after a previous prosecutor who was pretty certain. The previous prosecutor thought there were no crimes that he could charge most of the Charlottesville Tiki Torch marchers with specifically, was during the campaign confronted by an opponent who said, I think you can charge them under this statute. And the guy said, nah, I would never make the charges stick. Anyway, they've since had an election, and the guy who thinks you can make charges stick has won. He's the prosecutor in Albemarle County now, and apparently interested in bringing, and there's no statute of limitations on this one, bringing felony charges under this part of the Virginia Code against the marchers. And as they point out, one of the best documented crimes of the century. More pictures and video exist of these people unmasked and on camera, doing this particular crime, if it sticks as a crime. And there are hundreds of people that could be rounded up and charged with this essentially, it's unnamed, but it's essentially a Ku Klux Klan act. And, well, that would be probably pretty appropriate. It meets kind of all of the requirements. There were burning objects on somebody else's private property and or in public places. There was an intent to intimidate. It was pretty clear they were chanting, "We're here to intimidate you," essentially. And then all their faces are on there. And there were then, of course, counter-protesters who specifically were threatened because they were surrounded at the base of this statue that they arrived at, and who had to be the police eventually agreed to actually help and do something and get them out of there, but only after everybody tear-gassed everybody else and maced everybody else and threatened to murder anybody who stayed at the statue. So, yeah, they may have a good case. And I guess local elections come to the fore again. Voting matters. So there you go. We'll get to the details of that some other time. And in the meantime, now that you're here, we can turn to other exciting news, provided there is any. But
I don't know if it's exciting.
It's always exciting. But let's see. I don't know. Since we last spoke, no changes. Well, oh no, there has been a change in the Dianne Feinstein status. She has agreed to step down from the Judiciary Committee. It's just still unclear as to whether we can do anything about that vacancy. She'll leave, but will we be able to have anybody else in that place? No answer yet.
Not if Republicans have anything to say about it.
Right. And they are out there saying
they are now united.
Oh, okay.
Murkowski is the only one that's spoken publicly that it has even appeared to waver from the idea that no, Republicans are not going to let Democrats do the one primary thing that that parties need to do in the Senate, which is organize.
Yeah.
I mean, we really have to go back to just how badly Mitch McConnell has broken the Senate.
Yes.
I mean, this would never, pre-McConnell, have been a thing they considered. Not letting the majority party, either party. I mean, Democrats don't say, no, you can't have that person on a committee. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen.
Not in the Senate.
No.
It
never has before.
Why not do it now?
One of the really super, super, super basic things.
Yeah.
That happens every session. That happens rarely when somebody has to step down midterm. But, has been just clockwork, just how it works.
Yeah, the majority party, the majority party will have a majority on these, on each committee, and at a predetermined ratio.
Who gets to sit on the committee.
Yeah.
And the other party doesn't have a say.
Yeah, the Senate's been pretty committed to that for forever, since the beginning. They occasionally have fights about what should be the proper ratio for various committees, or what's the proper ratio given that the ratio of representation in the Senate doesn't fall evenly, or an even number. Will you take one or two extra seats on a committee here and there? And
that stuff they work out.
Yeah.
I mean,
occasionally
McConnell
with a
has drug it out as long as possible when he's had the opportunity
to
prevent Democrats from, when they have the majority in the last two terms, two sessions. He's drawn those negotiations out, but they've happened.
Yeah. And he has occasionally, he has a history of threatening to filibuster organizing resolutions in the past, although usually at the beginning of the new Congress, which is
right, and
when
that
they
was
come
mostly
up.
over legislative filibuster.
Yeah.
Never has been the composition of committees. Who gets to sit on them? I mean, if that was the thing,
we're
not have the Judiciary Committee Republicans that you have.
Right.
Democrats wouldn't have fought it because they're Democrats.
Oh.
But
So yeah.
Now McConnell's out saying no, we're not going to do it.
Okay.
Officially, McConnell says Senate Republicans, this is brand new news, will not take part in sidelining a temporary absent colleague off the committee just so Democrats can force through their very worst nominees. He and Collins are both doing the line, we're doing this because we care so much about Dianne Feinstein and we're mad at Democrats for trying to force her out.
Aha. But she
That's
stepped down.
their pretend position.
Okay. Yeah, we don't believe that she willingly stepped down. We think she was strong-armed, so we're going to punish Democrats for doing it, even though Dianne Feinstein says, no, I left. Well, sure, you say that. Well, yeah, she says that. What do you want to do? All right. Well, Susan Collins, I'm sure, very concerned about all of that. And
Very concerned.
yeah. All right. So they will make it impossible to replace her. Has she made her resignate or her what are we saying, resignation from the committee official? Or was that contingent on finding a replacement?
I didn't see any contingency. I haven't seen more specifically from her since she said last week, after all of those news reports about how she's really become a problem for Senate Democrats. All that I have seen from her is, I realize this is making getting judges confirmed difficult, so until I can return to D.C., I'm asking that I be temporarily replaced on the committee. So I don't know if that letter to Schumer was the official request. I think so. I mean, it's coming from her.
Yeah.
Presumably.
Right. Well, yeah, now I'm just sort of thinking, well, so what do they do with that paperwork? Is it something, I guess, unless they go to the floor with it and say.
With that paperwork. I don't think that there's any kind of established rule here, is there?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, like, at the moment, I would say, all right, well, here is a member of the Judiciary Committee saying they want to resign from the Judiciary Committee. But has she resigned by sending the letter, or do I have to take it to the floor and, like, enter it into the record? And so now the Senate recognizes that she's not at least temporarily not a member. And did I do that? And is that a thing temporarily? I don't know if I've ever seen that.
If you don't know this, then I sure don't know this.
Oh, well, somebody must have a guess. And I'm trying to, I don't know if I know of another situation, though, you know, I don't know everything about it, but whether there was ever anybody that said temporarily, I want to step aside and be replaced. Because usually they just say, well, temporarily, I'm just not there. Sorry, but I expect to come back.
I'm sure at the moment CRS is working on this and we can find out.
Yeah, we'll see whether they know. And then whether it's something that needs to be recognized in some way on the floor. And usually, you know, usually there's not a problem. I would
assume so. That well, it would come with and we have to put somebody else in the slot.
Yes. It usually comes.
I would think.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's happened before. It hasn't happened before in my memory.
Yeah. I really don't know. And, you know, usually though, when somebody's leaving a committee, there's it's a brief nothing. Nobody's getting in the way of anything, so you hardly ever notice it, but you'll see it occasionally entered into the congressional record. A letter from Senator so-and-so resigning from X committee, sometimes immediately followed, and sometimes not so immediately, followed by, but again, a resolution usually then offered naming somebody to the committee to take that spot, and it's a unanimous consent thing because Republicans say they had 10 seats on the committee, they're gonna have 10 seats on the committee. What do we care? And now they of course
this is not going to be a unanimous consent decision because the Republicans are not going to allow it.
So there you have it.
You know, I don't know that we've got the fight that we need from specifically Durbin to do anything about it. Here's what he said yesterday. Okay. Tomorrow this could happen to Republicans. Ooh. She's in a delicate part of her life and her Senate service. They should stand by her and give her a dignified departure. Yeah, well, and this was yesterday after you had Susan Collins saying, no, I'm not going to do this. After you had Mitt Romney saying, no, I'm not going to do this. This is Durbin's response.
Yeah.
Republicans should be nice to her because she's old and frail.
Well,
so,
you know, maybe they should take away her Social Security. They would do that.
If Durbin's taking this line, is Schumer going to say, okay, we need to fight and we need to have the filibuster fight now. We need to decide whether we go nuclear on this? I don't see it happening.
Doesn't sound like it. Yeah, Durbin, well, you know, he's got a history of doing, you know,
because we still have
things.
Blue slips.
Yes.
In the
and keeps saying, I'm sure he keeps returning to them.
The answer we would say would be, take it to the floor and go nuclear and make Sinema and Manchin say, yes, I agree that for the first time ever, the other party gets to say who we get to put on committees. Make them vote on that.
Yeah. Or
have this fight. But, of course, we're not going to have the fight. So what we're going to go back to is what we had in the 50-50 Senate, where it takes forever to discharge a nominee from the committee and get them onto the floor. It takes all those extra votes.
And I guess this falls on Durbin again because, as I recall, I'm not certain I'm right about this, but the Judiciary Committee used to have weird rules about the number of members of both parties that would have to vote on something, or that there would have to be a 2-vote majority in order to move people forward. And Dianne Feinstein was that second vote, and now with her absence, they're stuck. But
I think it's a simple majority vote now in that committee.
Okay, well, that would be nice. But it seems to me like that's one of the things that was a sticking point before, and I was like, oh no, this is the sort of thing that Durbin would reinstate.
Republicans can do things like just not show up and deny quorum, and I'm sure that they're going to.
Yeah.
The one job Democrats in the Senate had for these 2 years, since we had the House in Republican hands and they're not coming up with anything, their one job was to get as many new judges through as they possibly could. And they're not going to even be able to do that.
And the individual job of the senators is to show up so that there could be a majority and a quorum to do it.
Democrats can do this, and yeah.
And all right, not working out. So all right, well, I don't know why anybody thought that Republicans would cooperate on it. I guess there was some possibility that while Mitch McConnell was out, they would be accommodating. But he's back now, so screw you.
Yeah.
So, all right. Wonderful. Thank you for bringing us up to date on that.
You're welcome.
It does sound like you're feeling better.
We didn't have a chance to talk more, but next week.
Yes, we'll do that, I'm sure. And I'm glad you're feeling better. You sound better. So keep up the good work. Take your vitamins. Eat your oatmeal. I don't know. Whatever it is you're doing, do more of it. Thanks, Joan.
Okay.
Take care. All right. Time for us to wind up now. And, of course, this announcement.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, I'm glad we did get to hear from Joan at the very end there. It's just good to hear her voice and to catch up on exactly what's going on. Everything else that we haven't caught up on, we'll either take care of the rest of the week, or Justice Putnam will take care of it for you right now on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next, right here on Netroots Radio. You don't even have to move to get the rest of the news.